Welcome to episode 2. I'm so excited that you're here. As promised, we're going to talk about the wisdom of the body and how to use our body's wisdom to guide us through our lives. We are taught to disconnect from our bodies. We're taught to disconnect from our bodies from the time that we're very little, right? In order to be able to sit still in school and pay attention for long periods of time, we have to disconnect from our bodies. We're also taught to ignore our body's cues for thirst, cues for hunger, cues for sleep. So many cues. We're really conditioned to disconnect from our body and to ignore so many of the sensations in our bodies in order to be able to perform and to work in a certain way and do the things that schools and bosses and jobs and society is asking of us. Those things can only be done usually when we're disconnected from our bodies. And so this process of learning to actually live in our bodies, this process of learning to listen to our bodies, it is a true practice. And I have been working on listening to my body and being more embodied for 5 or 6 years at this point, and it's still a practice. And you can be in your body and 10 minutes later be pulled cognitively in a different direction and be completely disembodied again, right? And it is the practice over and over of really coming back to the body and really reconnecting with the body and paying attention to sensation, because sensation is what gives us the clues as to whether something is landing in our body in a positive way, in a fearful way, in an absolutely not, don't do that to me way. Like, our body is giving us clues all the time. It is constantly talking to us. We just haven't been taught how to listen. So my experience with my body is that as a kid, I played a lot of sports. I was very active. I grew up with horses, so I was riding my horses or playing in the hills or playing soccer. And as a student in high school, I really focused on soccer and running. And athletics were a big part of my life in high school and even into college, of being physically active and moving. And that is a way that I now know I really dealt with my stress. I dealt with stress by putting it into movement and moving that energy. But my experience of my body through athletics and through sports is that I pushed my body as hard as I could. And the ways that I took care of my body were like icing a sprained ankle or going to the acupuncturist, but I didn't know how to really listen to the messages that my body were giving me. And then in college, it was more of the same, of really pushing my body physically and pushing my body mentally, like how hard could I work and how much could I learn and how much could I have fun and how much could I run or play or do on insufficient sleep, often insufficient calories, and really, again, pushing my body to the limit. And my body began to talk. I'd had a knee injury, I had back pain. I really was fatigued at one point in college and really wore myself out. So my body was beginning to tell me, or my body was telling me loud enough that had to pay attention, because I hadn't paid attention to more subtle clues. And so as my body was starting to scream at me that what I was doing wasn't sustainable, I did slow down, at least for a time. And I had a really formative or informative experience. I knew that I needed to slow down and do something different, that the way that I was pushing, the way that I was running and doing soccer and academics and all the things was pushing me to exhaustion, and I needed a different way of relating. And I found a yoga class. I found a hatha yoga class. And that was really the first introduction to slowing down and being with my body, being with it, focusing on an area that was tight and breathing into it and seeing if I could get it to relax. that is the first time I learned to be with my body at all. And I noticed all these things, right? Like my right hip clicks if I try to do hip circles, and my tailbone pulls, and all of these patterns of tension that had already been set up by the time I was 20 years old from sports and horses and all the ways that I moved through the world up until that point. And I did a workshop with my yoga teacher called a Phoenix Rising Yoga Therapy Workshop. And I remember we took yoga poses, and then we would have some reflective questions about what the pose was telling you. And I remember being in child's pose, like curled up. And the message was like, I needed to move through the world with more ease, that I was really fighting. I was working hard to get through my days, to get through everything that I was doing, and I needed to find some more ease. And that was really the first time that I had a message like that from my body. Turns out my body's still telling me that, but I'm learning, I'm working. But that was the first time I really started to learn. And then when I was a Peace Corps volunteer, I learned to connect more to my body energetically. And one of our language teachers was studying Reiki, and so she started telling me about it and kind of talking about her experiences. And my experience of my body at that point was that one side was much darker and one side which was much lighter, and they felt very imbalanced. And I made my body wrong. I felt like they should be the same. And so I was on this quest to learn how to make my body energetically feel the same right to left. And so I went and took Reiki classes in Asunción, Paraguay, with a Reiki master there, and really started to learn more about energy and an energetic connection to my body and to the bodies of people that I worked with. And then I came back and I went back to the States, and I went to medical school and residency, and I went right back to completely disconnecting from my body. The only way to get through medical training was to disconnect from my body, to ignore hunger cues often, thirst cues often, not to go to the bathroom when I needed to go to the bathroom, to push through being exhausted. Like that disconnecting from my body was survival, essentially. And again, I was pushing my body with minimal sleep, with not the right food, not enough movement often, or sporadic movement. And it started talking. Like I had a lot of pain again. I had back pain, I had headaches, and the messages were loud enough that I addressed them, or tried to address them in the ways that I knew how. I found an amazing craniosacral therapist in San Francisco who really, really helped me get through medicine and medical training, and really helped my migraines a lot at that period of time in my life. And I found a wonderful hypnotherapist who helped me through a lot of things also as I went through medical training. But I still didn't really know how to listen to my body. And it wasn't until after my first kid was born and we had moved to Colorado, and I actually found a somatic therapist. And that's not what I was looking for. I was looking for somebody who was a contemplative psychotherapist. And this person is a contemplative psychotherapist and also does internal family systems and some somatic psychotherapy work. And this was, as I worked with her over the years, she started to work with me on embodiment, on really being in my body. And as I went through some difficult situations at work, negotiating contracts and expectations and switching jobs at one point, one of the things that we worked through is how it felt in my body to have these difficult, conflicted conversations. And often I just wanted to curl inward and protect myself. And we talked through this, and we acted out some of these things. And I really did learn that my body was trying to protect me, that these conversations and these conflicts were pushing against my own boundaries, and my body's way of trying to protect me or tell me that it was crossing a boundary was this desire to really fold in and to protect myself. And so I began to learn the language of the body. And the other thing that happened that really taught me a lot more about listening to the wisdom of the body was that I did a 6-month training program with Dr. Lissa Rankin, who is a physician author that many of you may know. And she does a lot of work at this point in her career with internal family systems, which I'm not an internal family systems practitioner, and yet I have found the framework to be invaluable both for myself and when I work with clients to help us start to talk about how we're moving through the world and to talk about parts in our body. And so in general, the idea is that we are made up of a lot of different parts. And some of the parts are, there's self, which is sort of our true self. And then there's a lot of parts who are often formed by trauma and often are trying to protect us. And they're often young. And so these parts may be trying to protect us in a way that a 5-year-old would protect themselves. And it may not be a helpful way at this point in our life, but it's the way that part knows how to try to keep me safe or you safe. And so one of the things that Dr. Lissa Rankin talks about is sort of bridging the work of internal family systems and how sometimes our bodies or our parts use physical illness to get our attention. Sometimes people develop things like cancer or a laryngitis because the part wants to protect us in some way. And this makes total sense to me. It's not something we could ever, of course, prove with a randomized controlled trial, but it makes sense to me that when the body has been trying to communicate with us for years or decades about something that we're doing in our life that is not aligned with who we are and is harmful to us, if we ignore it, then the body tries to speak more and more loudly or more and more clearly to try to get us to hear. And sometimes that means an illness or a serious illness. And so getting to go through this training and sort of think about how our bodies are both communicating with us about things like boundaries or what feels good or what doesn't feel good, or whether a decision I'm making is aligned with actually what works for me. How often do we say yes to something when we actually want to say no? How often do we agree to do something because we feel like we should, or we don't want to disappoint, or all of those other reasons when our hearts are actually saying, no, we don't want to do that. And our body, if you check in with your body, will give you the no. And your brain has all of these reasons why you should. And so our body is giving us this wisdom that our minds are sometimes telling us we should override. But true health, true wellness, a truly vibrant and expansive life has to listen to the body's no's, has to listen to the body's yeses. That's where the wisdom is. That's where the guide is. It's in our tissues. It's in our inside of us. More recently, I've begun working with another somatic therapist who more and more has helped me understand more deeply how much wisdom my body holds. A recent example is, well, to start, I'll say I was working with another energy practitioner several years ago, and I started to learn and understand that when I don't trust myself, I begin to tense up. And it's a way of like trying to remember or trying to do what it is I think I need to do. Instead of trusting that I will remember or trusting that I will take care of something, in some way my body thinks that if I like tense up and hold on to it, that I'm more likely to remember it or to do it. And so once I became aware of this, I started noticing all of the times I was tensing up. For example, I was at the Academy of Integrative Health and Medicine conference in San Diego during this time, and I was sitting listening to a lecture, and I really wanted to remember something, and I could feel how I started to tense up. Instead of trusting myself that I would remember or that I was taking in what I needed to take in, it's somehow like I thought that if I tense all up, that it'll somehow trap it in my body in a different way. And so becoming aware of this allowed me to start to shift the pattern, to notice when I was tensing up and to really explore what trust with myself means. And more recently, I've been working with the somatic therapist who does more body work with some parts work. And one of the things that has come to light for me recently is that when I'm in the hospital and I'm feeling overwhelmed, I have this tendency to very slightly internally rotate my thighs. And so what that does is it tenses up my hips and my low back. And my body told me that it is trying to protect me so that when I am overwhelmed, this movement is, again, it's that same idea of like folding in and protecting myself from what's overwhelming. But instead of actually protecting me, what it's doing is causing a lot of hip and back discomfort and carrying more tension. And so once I understood from the parts that this is what they're trying to do to protect me, then number one, I made the decision that I was going to take better care of myself at the hospital and not allow the overwhelm to happen as often. And number two, I can check in with my body on a regular basis and notice if I'm starting to develop the tension. And to be honest, just having that awareness, the tension hasn't been there. It's been almost 2 months since I understood that this is what I was doing. And I've had so much less tension and consequently so much less body discomfort simply because I understood what my body was trying to tell me, finally. This is probably a pattern I've had for decades, and it's just starting to unravel. I'm just starting to see this. So these are some of the ways that my body has taught me and shown me what environments are good for me, what environments are much more challenging for me to interface with. My body tells me when boundaries are being pushed or being crossed. I can feel that in my body. My body helps me make decisions. My mind can talk me in or out of any decision pretty darn quickly. And I can, like, in 10 minutes, I could convince myself yes and then no, and then yes and no several times, all in like 10 minutes. And so it's really been powerful for me to learn to filter some of the decisions through my body. Like if I'm going back and forth in my head, then really checking in with my body about what the real answer is, like what my body is telling me. And so that's where I start when I work with people, is starting to learn to pay attention when we're making decisions as to what your body is telling you about that decision. So if you're in a place where you can close your eyes, I'd invite you to close your eyes and just notice whatever you're sitting on or standing on, like really notice that connection to your seat or the ground. See if you can just relax into it a tiny bit more. Maybe take in a nice deep breath and then let it out. And one more. Nice inhale and then an exhale, and really let it all out and see if you can sink into that support a little bit more. And now I want you to think of a moment or a situation in which you felt small. You felt like maybe someone criticized you, maybe someone didn't see you, maybe you were criticizing yourself. Something about a situation that made you feel small and unimportant and maybe was hurtful. And as you think about this situation, I want you to notice what you feel in your body and where. Notice where this painful or disappointing feeling kind of shows up and what that feels like. Is that tightness? Is that weight? What does it feel like in your body? It feels like I want to, again, sort of fold in on myself and protect myself, especially my heart center, and it feels contracted. So just noticing that, whatever comes up for you. And then taking another deep breath and imagining a situation in which you felt intuitively that you were in the right place, right moment, right place, you made the right decision, a moment of beauty or joy or just certainty. And notice where you feel that in your body and what that feels like. And for me, it's a very heart-centered feeling, and it feels very expansive. And I feel some levity, whereas the heart situation felt heavy. So just noticing for you what that feels like. And then saying thank you to your body for helping us understand these two different sensations and reactions, and then opening your eyes. The invitation is to start to play with that. So when you're making decisions, noticing if you're making the decision with your mind, like the thoughts are running around and you're telling yourselves all the reasons you should or shouldn't do something. And then I would invite you to ask the same question and just feel what comes up in your body. Does it feel like that more expanded feeling, or does it feel like a more contracted feeling? Just notice what comes up. And sometimes, a lot of people talk about no being like a negative. No is one of the most powerful words. And sometimes a no feels so good. Like when you are firm in your boundary and clear that something isn't going to serve you, and you can honor that and say no, you'll get that expanded, beautiful, light feeling of certainty. So I would invite you just to begin playing as you go about your life and you're making a decision. Start with smaller ones. You don't have to make any giant decisions yet, but check in with your body. Start to begin to notice when your body is feeling more expanded, or when there's more levity, when there's more joy or more certainty. And notice when you're feeling under-resourced or contracted or heavy, or like you want to protect yourself. And just start to notice what decisions bring on those different reactions, what places bring on those different reactions. Just notice what your body's telling you. This is sort of the beginning, but your body can tell you so much about how to be healthier, how to be well, and how to create this life that you really deeply love and feel good in. So thank you so much again for being here. Next episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about palliative care and how palliative care has shaped my life, how doing the work of sitting with people with serious illness has made my life so rich and so beautiful by honoring the lessons I've learned from people along the way. So I will see you again next time. Thank you so much.